With the emergence of the United States as a global power in the late 19th century, its most affluent citizens were increasingly motivated to support and develop the country's cultural resources in a manner that would mirror America's nascent international stature. One of the most interesting offshoots of this effort was the creation of the National Conservatory of Music of America in 1885. This New York-based school was the brainchild of Jeanette Thurber, a former Paris Conservatory student and the wife of a millionaire grocery wholesaler. Thurber's democratic vision for the school was unique. Students were admitted based on their talents and abilities, regardless of race, gender, or ethnicity. With a keen sense for publicity, she worked tirelessly to fill the school's faculty with renowned musicians, and in this regard, the engagement of Dvorak in 1892 to serve as the conservatory's director was her greatest triumph. In hiring Dvorak, Thurber secured the services of a musician whose sensibilities were well suited to the conservatory's mission. His commitment to musical nationalism made him a fitting mentor to composers seeking to create music in a distinctly American style. And as a victim of anti-Czech discrimination for most of his life, he was extremely sympathetic to the school's egalitarian ideals. Although Dvorak felt like a stranger in a strange land, the stimulation he derived from his exposure to American culture had a substantial impact on his creative work. He was particularly taken with the traditional music of African and Native Americans, publicly stating that it should be the foundation of any serious, original school of American composition. This was a radical idea in a country where the basic humanity of African and Native Americans was widely denied. Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, to which he gave the subtitle From the New World, is by far the most well-known of the works he wrote while living in the United States. From the time of its Carnegie Hall premiere in December of 1893, the extent to which this symphony is an American work has been vigorously debated. Dvorak said there weren't any traditional American folk tunes in the piece, and that he had simply tried to express the characteristics of traditional American music that he found most compelling. Critics and scholars have been keen to identify folk music quotations in the work, but this search has been inconclusive. The famous English horn solo from the symphony's second movement was thought to be a transcription of a spiritual called Goin' Home, but in fact the spiritual was a vocal arrangement of Dvorak's tune, made 30 years after the symphony was written. The third of the first movement's principal themes recalls the spiritual Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, but it's more of a paraphrase than a quote. And although Dvorak is said to have told New York reporters that the middle movements were inspired by Longfellow's epic poem, The Song of Hiawatha, attempts to connect the music with the poem's narrative have been speculative. In the absence of such specific musical and extra-musical references, we can consider Dvorak's Ninth Symphony as another creative descendant of Beethoven's most dramatic symphonies, a piece of abstract music that is informed by what Tchaikovsky called the unburdening of the composer's soul, distilled to its sonic essence. The America that Dvorak encountered was unlike any place he'd ever been. Optimistic, energetic, noisy, enterprising, deeply patriotic and religious, a land of vast expanses and endless possibilities. The feelings and sensations these impressions evoked within him form the emotional and poetic core of this symphony, the starting point for a timeless portrait in sound of America on the brink of its first maturity.